Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. An espionage trial involving a former Polish Secret Services agent and an ex-employee of Huawei has begun in Warsaw. The suspected case of spying has strengthened the resolve of the forces in the country, as well as in other European Union states, who consider it vital to exclude the Chinese group's equipment from their developing 5G telecom networks. Poland arrested the two men in January 2019 on suspicion of spying for China, in a move that has ramped up international debate over the potential security risks of using Huawei equipment in communications networks. Huawei has repeatedly denied its equipment can be used for espionage by authorities in Beijing, but the United States has been pressurizing other countries to ban it. In Europe, only Britain and Sweden have so far done this. Polish prosecutors allege that Wang Weijing, 39, using the cover of being a Huawei executive, spent more than 7 years spying for China, trying to bolster the company's ability to influence the Polish government and enable it to manage the state technology infrastructure, court documents show. Wang is also charged with recruiting a former Polish Secret Service agent who, prosecutors say, informed him about ways of influencing the country's rescue and public safety services radio networks. The Polish defendant, Piotr D, who has been released upon paying bail after 6 months and had worked for years in the top echelons of government, is accused of offering himself as a source of information. Huawei fired Wang after his arrest but helped finance his legal fees. Former United States Vice President Mike Pence stated in 2019 that Poland's handling of the case demonstrated its commitment to ensuring the telecommunications sector was not compromised in a way that threatens our national security. The Polish government proposed draft legislation last year that could lead to the exclusion of Huawei from building 5G networks, but the proposal has yet to be discussed by Parliament. Denmark's parliament has passed a new law that will enable the Nordic country to relocate asylum seekers to countries outside Europe. Copenhagen is defying calls to abandon the plans from NGOs and the United Nations, which fear an erosion of refugees' rights. The European Commission is also critical of the new scheme. The move to pass the bill, with 70 lawmakers voting in favour and 24 against, is an apparent break with the European Union's efforts to overhaul Europe's broken migration and asylum rules, an extremely divisive subject within the bloc. The bill would allow Denmark to move refugees arriving on Danish soil to asylum centres in a partner country, potentially outside Europe, where asylum seekers would have their asylum cases reviewed and possibly obtain protection in that country. The wealthy Scandinavian nation, which has gained notoriety for its hardline immigration policies over the last decade, has declared a goal of receiving 0 asylum seekers, and instead aims to only accept refugees under the United Nations quota system. Critics worry that the plan will undermine the safety and welfare of refugees and compromise their human rights, as well as allow Denmark to duck its obligations within the European Union.
We take note of the vote today in the Danish Parliament on the proposal for amendments to the Danish Aliens Act. We share the concerns expressed by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, both about the compatibility of this text with Denmark's international obligations and about the risk of undermining the foundations of the international protection system for the world's refugees. External processing of asylum claims raises fundamental questions about both the access to asylum procedures and effective access to protection. It is not possible under existing EU rules or proposals under the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. The Pact on Migration and Asylum that the Commission proposed is based on the right to asylum as a fundamental right in the European Union, guaranteed by the EU Charter. The Commission will now carefully analyse the Danish laws, pending their entry into force, before deciding on any next steps.
Denmark has yet to reach an agreement with a partner country, but there are negotiations with several candidate countries. The United Nations Refugee Agency last month called on Denmark not to pass the bill, which it says could catalyse a race to the bottom if other European countries begin mimicking Denmark's policy. Employees of JBS, the world's largest meat packer, have returned to US meat plants after the company's beef operations were halted following a Russian ransomware attack. The new attack against critical American infrastructure comes just a month after the ransomware hack by another Russia-tied group, which crippled the United States fuel supply chains for several days. A notorious Russia-linked hacking group is behind the cyber attack against JBS that disrupted meat production in North America and Australia. A source familiar with the matter has told Reuters. Brazil's JBS controls about 20% of the slaughtering capacity for US cattle and hogs, so the plant's reopening should prevent a severe supply chain disruption at a time consumers are already facing high meat prices and general food inflation. The vast majority of the company's beef, pork, poultry and prepared foods plants are now operational again, according to a statement.
goes to show that really everything is on the table for ransomware attacks. So we've seen the attacks on supply chains, whether they're tied to industry like the gas colonial pipeline, and we've seen things with tied to food and beverage, and now here we sit in industries that are tied to our supply chain relative to meat and poultry are now being targeted as well.
The cyber attack followed one last month by a group with ties to Russia on Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the United States, which crippled fuel delivery for several days in the United States southeast region.
Yeah, we hear phrases a lot in this industry of likely being tied to specific countries, right? I think in this particular, we've seen reports of likely being tied to Russian origin or other countries. And the reason why you hear likely is because these groups are very good about hiding what their actual source country or residence is. And because they're good at that, that's why you hear terms like likely will be based in X, Y, and Z. It's because they're very good at it. And there's more than anecdotal evidence, though, in certain cases. When we talk about some of these ransomware groups.
It's the third major attack this year tied to Russia, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said on Wednesday that the JBS hack was expected to be discussed at the mid-June summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has delivered a defiant speech in the country's parliament, explaining his government's motives for removing all the top judges in the country's Supreme Court. President Bukele is one of the most popular leaders of the Americas, with his New Ideas party winning more than a two-thirds supermajority in the parliamentary election in February. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele delivered the speech as his power is growing. He made clear that the drive behind his actions is to make the country truly sovereign.
Behind
this president, and this is something that no one can deny, there is no oligarchy. There are no military hunters, nor much less a guerrilla commander giving orders, saying what must be done, like all presidents from the past. This government you see here has a group behind it. That group is called the Salvadorian people. Last month, lawmakers aligned with Bukele voted to remove all of the top judges on the country's Supreme Court, which the opposition and a range of international critics slammed as a dangerous power grab. The vote to oust the judges was quickly criticised by the likes of Juan Gonzalez, US President Joe Biden's senior Latin American advisor. President Bukele quickly pointed out to the fact that Biden himself has agreed to start the preparations for packing the United States Supreme Court by expanding it. You can't just govern anymore from behind the power of the executive. You can't govern anymore from behind the power of the legislative branch. You can't govern anymore from behind the Supreme Court of El Salvador. You can't govern anymore from the shadows. You have to go out and show your face. Fight for power with your ideological base, from its base, its ideas, its organizations, or as they say now, civil society organizations. But the factions in power are showing their face in the light of day with powerful international and national support, showing us the importance of our fifth step, the battle of the Salvadorian people against the ideological apparatus. His speech in San Salvador comes as Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken are visiting the region. And late last month, the United States Agency for International Development said that it will pull aid from El Salvador's National Police and a Public Information Institute and will instead redirect the funding to civil society groups. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.